In the last video, we installed Semantic UI React into our project. Before we move on, there's one little oddity around the installation of this module that I want to point out. I'm back in the documentation on the usage page right here. At the very top, you'll see directions on how to add the module. In this case, they're saying, hey, use the yarn package manager, which is more or less equivalent to npm, which is what we've been using. The directions here clearly say, oh yeah, run this command, add the module Semantic UI React, which is what we just did. But what's a little bit misleading is that when you install this module right here, all you are getting is code to create these different components that are listed inside the module. What's missing from this is the actual CSS that makes all these components look nice. So by default, this module right here just gives you big blobs of components, a bunch of components that you can render onto the screen, but it's just the markup and you don't get any styling for them. So if we used any of these components right now, they would show up as very plain looking, boring text, and they would look awfully strange. So we have to go through one additional step to actually include some CSS into our project as well. If we scroll down this page a little bit further, you'll see another section called CSS. So this is all the different ways that we can include the Semantic UI CSS into our project. We can either add in this link tag right here, or we can add a separate package called Semantic UI CSS and then import that somewhere into our project. We're going to use this methodology right here just because it will allow us to skip having to add in a link tag. So let's go back over to our terminal and we're going to install this module as well, Semantic UI CSS. Back inside my project directory at the terminal, I'll run npm install --save Semantic UI CSS. All right, so we'll let that do its installation and we'll come back in just a moment and make sure that we add in this import statement. But while that's installing, let's talk about where we're going to immediately start to use this Semantic UI package. If we go and look at our mockups one more time, you'll recall that on this initial landing page, the page that shows our list of campaigns, we want to show a couple of different boxes, where each box is supposed to give some details about one campaign that has been created by our factory. At the top of the box, we want to show an address, and then underneath it, I want to show a link that allows the user to go and navigate over to look at that particular campaign. So let's go back to the Semantic UI documentation and see if there is any component over there that allows us to kind of make something that looks like this. All right, so let's go back over. On the left-hand nav, I'm going to scroll down a little bit to the section called Views, and then inside there, I'll find the card component. So here's the documentation on the card component. We're going to be using this component quite a bit throughout this application. It's kind of a multi-use component that allows us to make nice little looking boxes, add images, format them nicely, all that kind of good stuff. So we're going to get pretty familiar with this card component. In this case, because we want to show a list of different boxes here or a list of different cards, we're going to use a specific subcomponent in this thing called card.group that you see right here. So I'll click on card.group. The purpose of this thing is to display a group of cards to the user, and we'll see exactly what a card looks like in just a second. If you are all curious, this is a list of all the different props that we can pass into this component, but of course we'll go through these in great detail in just a little bit when we set up our first group. So I'm going to scroll down just a little bit and we'll get a better sense of what a group of cards looks like. All right, so here's a good example right here. So this is essentially what we want our landing page to look like. At the top of each card, I want to show the address of a particular campaign. And then underneath that, in this kind of content area right here, I want to show a link that a user can click on to go and visit that campaign. We're not going to be using any of this grayed text right here, so we don't have to worry about placing that grayed text. If I hover over this section, remember we can get this little code icon right here. So I'll click it and we'll get a good example of how to create a card group like this. So here's the code snippet right here. Let's break this down piece by piece. At the top, we import card from Semantic UI React. Next, we create an array of what they call items. Every item is an object inside this array. and every object represents one card that will be created and placed on the screen. Every one of these objects is supposed to have a defined set of properties tied to them. So if we add a property to each of these objects called header, that text right there will be used as the header text inside the card. So in this case right here, you see project report April. Yep, there's the text right there, project report April. So the header property is used as the header text, and the description property is used as the description text. So leverage agile frameworks, blah, 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 leverage agile frameworks, and so on. So I think that what we need to do is to take every one of the campaigns that you and I fetched from our campaign factory. We're going to take that array of addresses. We're going to loop over it, and for every address, we're going to build one of these objects. Each object is going to have a header of the campaign's address, and then the description will be a link that can take the user over to visit some details about that campaign. So essentially, we have to take that array of addresses and transform it into an array of objects. After we create that array of objects, we can then place the card.group component somewhere inside of our component, and we'll pass in that array of items, or that array of objects, as the items property. And that should then get our group of cards to appear on the screen. Okay, so let's take a pause right here. We'll come back to the next video, and we'll start implementing this card group component.